In the vibrant world of social media, where influencers hold sway over millions, a dark undercurrent of prejudice still runs deep. Among these influencers was Hannah, a young black woman who had built a modest but loyal following through her beauty tutorials and uplifting content. Her audience loved her for her authenticity and the way she confidently embraced her natural beauty. But little did she know she was about to become the target of a cruel and unexpected attack. Set your sail as we explore knee-deep into this world of prejudice, backlash, and finally redemption. One evening, as Hannah scrolled through her notifications, she stumbled upon a video that sent a chill down her spine. It was from a well-known influencer, someone with a massive following who often prided herself on being candid and unfiltered. However, this time, her candidness took a dark turn. The video was a blatant mockery of Hannah's latest post, where she had shared a heartfelt message about embracing her natural hair. The influencer, who went by the name Tara Lux, ridiculed everything about Hannah, from her hair to her skin tone to her choice of words. Tara's video was filled with veiled insults wrapped in a thin veneer of humor, but the racism underlying her words was unmistakable. She mimicked Hannah's voice, exaggerated her mannerisms, and in the most hurtful twist, she implied that Hannah's confidence in her appearance was a delusion. She really thinks she's all that with that hair? Please, it looks like a bird's nest, Tara sneered in the video, her words dripping with disdain. The comments section under Tara's video was a mix of laughter and hateful remarks, amplifying the cruelty. As Hannah watched, her heart sank. The pain of being targeted so publicly and on such a massive scale was overwhelming. But this wasn't the first time Hannah had faced such prejudice. Growing up, she had often been the target of mockery and scorn because of her appearance. Her dark skin and coiled hair made her a frequent target in school, where she was often told she was too black or that her hair was unruly. These experiences had toughened her, teaching her to stand tall despite the hurtful words thrown her way. Yet, seeing those old wounds reopened in such a public forum was deeply unsettling. Hannah's first instinct was to retreat, to delete her social media accounts and disappear from the toxic environment. But as she watched the video again, something inside her shifted. The sadness began to transform into something else: anger. Not just anger at Tara, but at the entire culture that allowed such blatant racism to be passed off as humor. She realized that staying silent would only let this kind of behavior continue unchecked. Taking a deep breath, Hannah decided she wouldn't let this go unchallenged. She had a voice, and it was time to use it. She knew that this was bigger than just her. It was about standing up against the kind of systemic racism that had allowed Tara's video to be made in the first place. With this resolve, she began to plan her response, one that would not only defend herself, but also send a message to everyone watching. As she typed out her thoughts, the words came easily. This wasn't just about clapping back at a bully. It was about reclaiming her dignity and making it clear that she would not be silenced or shamed. Hannah knew that the world was watching, and she was determined to make every word count. Hannah's mind raced as she prepared her response. She knew that confronting Tara directly could be risky. Tara had a massive following, and the backlash could be overwhelming. But Hannah was resolute. She wasn't just defending herself. She was speaking up for everyone who had ever been silenced or shamed for simply being themselves. Instead of an immediate reaction, Hannah took her time crafting a response that was both measured and powerful. She knew that a hasty reply could easily be dismissed as an emotional outburst, and she wanted to ensure her message was undeniable. She wanted it to resonate far beyond this one incident. The following day, after a sleepless night of writing and rewriting, Hannah finally hit post. Her video was titled, "A Message to Those Who Think My Hair is a Joke." The title alone was enough to spark curiosity and draw viewers in, but it was the content that would truly leave an impact. In the video, Hannah began by calmly addressing Tara's comments. She didn't shy away from showing the hurtful clips, but rather she used them as a springboard to discuss a much larger issue. "What you see here," she began, "isn't just someone making fun of my hair. It's a reflection of a society that has been conditioned to see black features as something to be ridiculed or dismissed." As she spoke, her voice steady but firm, Hannah delved into her own experiences with racism and how they mirrored what Tara had so casually displayed. She recounted the moments in her life where she had been told, both directly and indirectly, that she wasn't beautiful, that she wasn't enough. But she also spoke about her journey to self-acceptance and how she had learned to embrace every part of herself that the world had once tried to make her feel ashamed of. The video wasn't just about her. Hannah made it clear that this was a collective struggle, a fight that many people, especially Black women, faced every day. She talked about the pressure to conform to Eurocentric beauty standards and the damage it did to one's self-esteem. But rather than ending on a note of victimhood, Hannah flipped the narrative. She spoke directly to her audience with a message of empowerment. Our hair, our skin, our features, they are not a joke. They are a part of who we are, and they are beautiful. No one has the right to make us feel less than. And the next time someone tries, remember that their words say more about them than they do about you. Hannah's video wasn't an angry tirade. It was a powerful, thought-provoking response that resonated deeply with her audience. Within hours, the video began to spread like wildfire. Comments poured in, not just from her regular followers, but from people all over the world who were moved by her words. Many shared their own stories of prejudice and how they had struggled to find acceptance in a world that often judged them unfairly. The internet was abuzz with discussions about Hannah's message. People were sharing the video across all platforms, using hashtags like Black is Beautiful and Respect Natural Hair. What started as a cruel joke had now turned into a powerful movement, with Hannah at its center. But the most telling reaction came from Tara Lux herself. As the hours passed, the silence from Tara's camp grew louder. Many of her followers began to question her actions, with some even unfollowing her in protest. Tara, who was usually quick to clap back at any criticism, found herself at a loss. The tide had turned, and it was clear that this wasn't just about a difference of opinion. It was about right and wrong. As Hannah's video continued to gain traction, the public's demand for Tara to address her comments grew stronger. It wasn't long before Tara, under immense pressure, released a statement. But instead of the usual defiant tone, this one was different. Her statement was an attempt at an apology, though it was clear that it had been crafted more out of necessity than genuine remorse. Hannah's response to this was simple. She didn't engage in a back and forth with Tara. Instead, she let her original message stand on its own. It was powerful enough, and she knew that continuing to address Tara directly would only give her more attention than she deserved. Hannah's decision to focus on the bigger picture rather than get caught up in petty drama elevated her in the eyes of her audience. She had turned a hurtful situation into a moment of empowerment and education, not just for herself, but for everyone watching. Hannah's video continued to ripple across the internet, resonating with people far beyond her usual circle of followers. The sheer volume of support was overwhelming. Messages of solidarity poured in, with individuals sharing how her words had inspired them to embrace their own identities and stand up against prejudice. But amidst all this positivity, Hannah knew there was more to be done. She realized that her video had struck a chord not just because of what was said, but because of the broader conversation it ignited. People were hungry for more than just a viral moment. They were looking for a leader, someone who could articulate the frustrations and hopes of an entire community. And in Hannah, they found that voice. Fueled by the momentum, Hannah decided it was time to take her response a step further. While her initial video had been powerful, she wanted to ensure that the message reached those who needed to hear it the most, the people who looked up to influencers like Tara, and those who might still be swayed by her careless words. She knew that this required a strategic approach. Rather than engaging directly with Tara or those who supported her, Hannah opted to use her platform to educate and empower. She launched a series of follow-up posts, each one tackling different aspects of the issues at hand: colorism, the history of Black hair discrimination, and the importance of self-love in the face of societal pressures. Each post was meticulously crafted, blending personal anecdotes with historical context, offering her audience not just a voice, but knowledge and tools to push back against the biases they faced. These posts weren't just text on a screen. They were accompanied by striking visuals, images of black women and men proudly displaying their natural hair, historical photos showing the roots of discrimination, and quotes from prominent black figures who had championed these issues long before social media existed. The response was staggering. Hannah's content wasn't just being liked or shared, it was sparking discussions, debates, and even calls to action. Meanwhile, Tara Lux found herself increasingly isolated. Her attempts to brush off the criticism had backfired, with many of her followers demanding she take responsibility for her words. The influencer, who had once thrived on controversy, was now caught in the eye of a storm she couldn't control. Sponsors began distancing themselves from her, and her follower count started to dwindle. The clapback that Hannah had unleashed was not just a rebuttal, it was a reckoning. Hannah, however, remained focused. She wasn't interested in Tara's downfall. She was interested in uplifting those who had been hurt by people like Tara. Her platform became a beacon of positivity and resilience. She organized virtual meetups where people could share their experiences, connect with one another, and find support. She invited experts to speak on topics ranging from mental health to the impact of systemic racism, turning her platform into a community hub for empowerment and education. As Hannah's influence grew, so did the movement she had inadvertently started. What began as a response to a single hateful video had evolved into something much larger, a collective pushback against racism and discrimination in all its forms. The hashtags that had started trending with her initial video were now symbols of a broader fight, with people from all walks of life joining in to support the cause. One of the most significant moments came when a group of prominent black influencers reached out to Hannah, proposing a collaborative campaign to highlight and celebrate black beauty. This wasn't just about social media, it was about creating real change. Together, they organized a series of events, including panels, workshops, and charity drives, all aimed at supporting black-owned businesses and promoting positive representation in media. Hannah's role in these initiatives solidified her position as a leader in the movement. She had not only clapped back at the racist remarks, but had transformed them into an opportunity for growth, awareness, and unity. The internet frenzy that followed her initial response was no longer just about the drama. It was about making a tangible difference. And yet, through it all, Hannah remained humble. She often reminded her followers that this wasn't about her. It was about something much bigger. "I'm just one person," she would say in her videos, "but together we can create change. We can show the world that our voices matter, that our beauty matters, and that no one has the right to make us feel less than." This message resonated deeply with her audience. Hannah had become more than just an influencer. She was a symbol of resilience and hope, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, one voice could spark a movement. As Hannah's movement gained traction, the internet buzzed with an energy that was both empowering and contagious. Social media platforms were flooded with posts supporting Hannah's message, each one amplifying the conversation she had sparked. The hashtags "Shop Black," "Is Beautiful," "Natural Pride," and "We're Not Your Joke" were trending globally, uniting people from all walks of life in a powerful display of solidarity. The impact of Hannah's response was undeniable. What began as a single video had snowballed into a widespread cultural moment, one that extended far beyond the initial incident. Major media outlets picked up the story, covering the unfolding events and highlighting the significance of Hannah's message. She was invited to speak on talk shows, podcasts, and panels, where she shared her experiences and discussed the broader issues of racism and discrimination that her story had brought to light. But perhaps the most significant reaction came from everyday people, those who had long felt marginalized, unseen, or silenced. For them, Hannah's words were more than just a response. They were a rallying cry. People began sharing their own stories of discrimination and resilience, using the hashtags to connect with others who had experienced similar struggles. These stories varied widely, from tales of overcoming prejudice in the workplace to anecdotes about embracing one's natural beauty despite societal pressures. Yet, despite their differences, they all shared a common thread: the desire to be seen, heard, and respected for who they were. The online community that had formed around Hannah's message quickly grew into a vibrant, supportive network. Social media groups and pages dedicated to promoting Black beauty, culture, and empowerment began popping up, attracting thousands of members. These spaces became places where people could exchange advice, offer support, and celebrate each other's successes. It was clear that Hannah had tapped into something deep and profound, a collective yearning for change, for justice, and for recognition. Meanwhile, the response to Tara Lux's actions continued to escalate. The backlash she faced was swift and unforgiving. Followers who had once idolized her began to unfollow en masse, disgusted by her blatant racism and lack of accountability. Brands that had previously sponsored her quickly cut ties, issuing statements condemning her behavior. Tara's carefully curated image as a real and relatable influencer crumbled, replaced by the reality of her bigotry and insensitivity. Despite her attempts to apologize, the damage was done. Tara's half-hearted apology video, where she claimed she didn't mean to offend anyone, was met with overwhelming criticism. Comments flooded in, pointing out the insincerity of her words and the lack of genuine remorse. Many accused her of only apologizing to save her career, rather than out of any real understanding of the harm she had caused. As her subscriber count plummeted, it became clear that Tara's days as a top influencer were numbered. On the other hand, Hannah's platform continued to grow exponentially. Her follower count skyrocketed, and her videos reached millions of viewers. But rather than letting the fame go to her head, Hannah stayed true to her roots. She remained focused on her mission to educate, empower, and inspire. She used her newfound influence to spotlight other Black creators, promoting their work and encouraging her followers to support Black-owned businesses. Hannah's approach to her newfound fame was refreshing and genuine. She wasn't interested in becoming a celebrity. She was interested in making a difference. In interviews, she often deflected praise, emphasizing that the real heroes were the countless individuals who had shared their stories, joined the movement, and taken action to create a better, more inclusive world. As the weeks passed, the impact of Hannah's movement began to ripple outward. Schools and universities started incorporating discussions on racism, colorism, and cultural representation into their curricula, often citing Hannah's story as a case study. Activists and organizations dedicated to social justice reached out to collaborate with her, recognizing the power of her message and the authenticity of her approach. Even beyond the digital realm, the effects of Hannah's message were being felt. Fashion brands that had previously ignored or marginalized Black consumers began re-evaluating their practices, some even launching campaigns to celebrate Black beauty and diversity. The entertainment industry, too, took notice, with several networks and production companies expressing interest in creating content that more accurately represented the experiences of people of color. Hannah's clapback had become more than just a viral sensation. It was a catalyst for real, meaningful change. It was a reminder that the power of social media, when used for good, could amplify voices that had been silenced for too long. It was proof that one person, armed with courage and conviction, could indeed make a difference. But for Hannah, the most gratifying part of it all was the personal connections she had made along the way. The messages from young girls who saw themselves in her, the heartfelt emails from parents thanking her for inspiring their children, the stories of people who had found the strength to stand up for themselves, all of this reinforced why she had chosen to speak out in the first place. Hannah had set out to defend herself against a bully, but in doing so, she had found a community. She had turned her pain into power, creating something truly extraordinary, a movement that would continue to inspire and uplift long after the initial controversy had faded. This wave of empowerment was something that people like Tara Lux, who thrived on controversy and shock value, could only dream of. Tara had always prided herself on being bold, unfiltered, and unapologetically herself, with her brand thriving on pushing boundaries and stirring the pot. Yet now, as she sat in her plush modern apartment, staring at the screen of her phone, the reality began to sink in. The backlash had started as a trickle, but quickly turned into an overwhelming tide, leaving Tara, for the first time, feeling something she wasn't used to: uncertainty. When she had made the video mocking Hannah, it had been just another day for Tara. She remembered the moment vividly. Sitting in her perfectly lit recording space, she had scrolled through Instagram, looking for content that would rile up her audience. That's when she stumbled upon Hannah's post, a video of her talking about embracing her natural hair. To Tara, it seemed like the perfect target. Her mind had quickly conjured up the mocking tones and exaggerated expressions she would use. Who does she think she is? Tara had thought, a smirk playing on her lips as she hit the record button. In her mind, Hannah was just another easy target, an obscure influencer who wouldn't dare fight back. Tara's prejudice ran deep, though she never admitted it, not even to herself. She had always seen herself as superior, someone who had earned her place at the top through sheer will and personality. To her, mocking someone like Hannah wasn't just amusing, it was a way to reinforce her own status. She saw no harm in it. After all, she'd done it before, and it had always paid off with increased views and engagement. As she filmed the video, mimicking Hannah's voice and ridiculing her natural hair, Tara felt a rush of adrenaline. This was her domain, where she controlled the narrative. She imagined her followers laughing along, sharing the video, and keeping her at the center of attention. That's all that mattered to Tara: attention, validation, and maintaining her image as someone who wasn't afraid to say what others wouldn't. But the first wave of backlash had caught her off guard. She remembered watching the comments section of her post as it started to fill with criticisms. At first, Tara shrugged it off. "Haters gonna hate," she muttered to herself, dismissing the early signs of trouble. This wasn't the first time she'd faced criticism, and it had never bothered her before. In fact, she thrived on it. Controversy was good for business, she'd always believed. It kept her relevant, kept people talking about her. But this time, something felt different. The criticism wasn't just coming from a small, vocal minority, it was widespread. Her followers, people she thought she understood, were turning against her. Messages of support for Hannah began to flood her notifications, while Tara's own fans demanded explanations. But even then, Tara's resolve remained unshaken. She was convinced this would blow over, like it always had before. "What do they know?" she thought defiantly, as she scrolled through the mounting criticism. "They're just being overly sensitive. People need to lighten up." She believed that people were simply overreacting, that this was just another instance of what she considered the outrage culture that she so despised. In her mind, she was the victim of a hypersensitive society that couldn't take a joke. When the backlash intensified, Tara decided to issue an apology, though it wasn't from a place of remorse. The decision was purely tactical. She believed that a quick, half-hearted apology would be enough to calm the storm. She filmed the video with the same dispassionate efficiency she used for all her content, saying the words she knew people wanted to hear, but feeling none of them. "I'm sorry if anyone was offended," she had said, emphasizing the "if," as if the offense was a matter of debate. But the backlash didn't subside. In fact, it grew louder. Tara watched in shock as her follower count began to plummet, and the comments under her apology video were scathing. They called her out for not only the initial video, but for the insincerity of her apology. Brands she had partnered with for years were now publicly distancing themselves from her, citing values of inclusivity and respect that they claimed she had violated. The walls of her carefully constructed world were closing in, and for the first time, Tara didn't know how to respond. The realization hit her hard. This wasn't just a passing controversy. This was a full-blown reckoning. She was no longer in control of the narrative. The power she had wielded so confidently was slipping through her fingers, and with it, the career she had built on controversy and provocation. Sitting alone in her dimly lit living room, Tara felt a pang of something she hadn't felt in years: fear. Not the fear of losing followers or sponsors, but a deeper, more unsettling fear. The fear that maybe, just maybe, she was wrong, that her actions had hurt people in ways she hadn't considered or cared about. She replayed the video of herself mocking Hannah, and for the first time saw it not through the lens of entertainment, but through the eyes of those she had targeted. The realization was jarring. But old habits die hard. Despite the mounting consequences, Tara's instinct was still to fight back. She considered doubling down, defending herself, claiming she was misunderstood. Yet every time she opened her mouth to say the words, they felt hollow, even to her. The bravado that had carried her through countless controversies was gone, replaced by a gnawing uncertainty. As the days passed, Tara's isolation grew. Calls from brands ceased, and her inbox, once overflowing with collaboration requests, was eerily silent. She avoided social media, unable to face the deluge of criticism. Her confidence, once her greatest asset, was now shattered. Tara Lux, the influencer who had built her empire on being unfiltered and unapologetic, was left with nothing but regret and a tarnished reputation. In the quiet of her apartment, Tara found herself replaying the events over and over in her mind. The flashbacks to her mocking video were now tainted with shame. She realized that she had been blinded by her own prejudice, convinced that her views were justified, simply because they were hers. The confidence she had in her superiority had been nothing more than a facade, one that had crumbled the moment it was truly challenged. And so, for the first time, Tara found herself confronting an uncomfortable truth. She wasn't the victim here. She had caused real harm, and now she was facing the consequences. But even as she acknowledged this, she wasn't ready to change. The bitterness lingered, a stubborn refusal to fully accept her downfall, even as it unfolded before her eyes. As she sat in her isolation, the world moved on without her, and Tara Lux faded from the spotlight she had once dominated. The price of her prejudice was clear, and it was one she would continue to pay, long after the cameras stopped rolling. While Tara Lux sat in the growing darkness of her self-imposed isolation, wrestling with the consequences of her actions, another woman was experiencing a vastly different kind of solitude, a quiet, reflective one. Hannah had always known that stepping into the public eye came with risks, but she had never anticipated the depth of emotions she would experience in the wake of her first response video. After posting her message to those who mocked her natural hair, Hannah had felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Relief at finally standing up for herself was tinged with anxiety about the potential fallout. Would people understand her message? Would they see it as just another internet spat, or would they grasp the deeper issues she was trying to address? She remembered vividly the moments after she hit post, staring at the screen as the video began to circulate. The first few minutes were agonizing, filled with uncertainty and doubt. What if no one cared? What if her words fell on deaf ears? Or worse, invited even more ridicule? But as the minutes turned into hours, something unexpected happened. The video didn't just gain attention, it exploded. The notifications started flooding in, a torrent of messages, comments, and shares. Hannah watched in amazement as her following grew exponentially, with people from all over the world rallying behind her. They weren't just supporting her, they were thanking her, praising her for saying what needed to be said, for having the courage to speak out against the kind of casual racism that so many had experienced, but few had dared to confront publicly. Yet beneath the wave of support, Hannah felt an undercurrent of something else, something heavier, more profound. It was the weight of responsibility. She had struck a nerve, and now the world was looking to her for more than just a response. They were looking to her for leadership. This realization was both empowering and terrifying. As the days passed, the overwhelming support continued to pour in, but so did the inevitable trolls and detractors. Among the most prominent was Tara Lux, whose mocking video had initially sparked this entire ordeal. Hannah had anticipated some backlash, but the sheer vitriol in Tara's words had cut deep. Tara's dismissive tone, her callous disregard for Hannah's feelings, was a stark reminder of the racism that was still very much alive and thriving, even among those who should have known better. Tara Lux wasn't just any influencer. She was of mixed race, half Caucasian and half Korean. It was a background that, in another context, might have endowed her with a deeper empathy, a better understanding of what it meant to be marginalized. After all, Hannah thought, wasn't Tara's mother's heritage, Korean, still subject to discrimination and prejudice in many parts of the world, including the very society that Tara catered to? This lack of empathy from someone who, in Hannah's eyes, should have understood the pain of discrimination was deeply troubling. How could someone with such a background be so blind to the hurt they caused? This question gnawed at Hannah, even as she continued to focus on the positive impact her video was having. It wasn't just about Tara's words, it was about the entire mindset that allowed such words to be spoken without a second thought. In the quiet moments, when the flood of notifications had subsided and Hannah was alone with her thoughts, she found herself reflecting on the broader implications of what had happened. This wasn't just about her hair or her skin. It was about a society that still struggled to see the beauty in diversity. It was about a world where people like Tara Lux could rise to prominence by tearing others down. A world where the voices of the marginalized were often drowned out by the loudest, most toxic opinions. But amidst these reflections, Hannah also found a renewed sense of purpose. The support she had received wasn't just validation, it was a call to action. People were looking to her not just as a victim of Tara's cruelty, but as a leader who could guide them through the murky waters of racism and prejudice. They were seeking someone who could articulate their frustrations, someone who could give voice to the pain they had been carrying for so long. Hannah knew that this responsibility was not to be taken lightly. She had a platform now, one that she had never sought, but had been thrust upon her by circumstance. And with that platform came the power to influence, to educate, and to inspire. But it also came with the pressure to live up to the expectations of those who had placed their trust in her. In those moments of solitude, Hannah's mind often wandered back to her own experiences with racism, growing up as a young black girl in a world that constantly told her she wasn't enough. She thought of the countless times she had been made to feel inferior because of the color of her skin, the texture of her hair, or the way she spoke. She thought of the years it had taken for her to love herself fully, to see the beauty in her own reflection, despite what the world tried to tell her. These memories, painful as they were, had shaped her into the woman she was today, a woman who refused to be silenced, who refused to let others define her worth. And now, as she stood at the forefront of this unexpected movement, she realized that her story was not just her own. It was the story of so many others who had been marginalized, who had been told they were less than because they didn't fit into the narrow mold of what society deemed acceptable. Hannah understood that the battle she was fighting wasn't just against one influencer's racist comments, it was against a much larger, more insidious system of oppression. And while the support she had received was heartening, it also underscored the enormity of the task ahead. This was just the beginning, and there was so much more to do. As she continued to engage with her audience, responding to their messages and sharing their stories, Hannah felt a deep sense of connection to the people who had rallied behind her. They were not just followers. They were allies in a shared struggle, a community bound together by a common desire for justice and equality. And so, while Tara Lux sat in the shadows of her crumbling empire, grappling with the consequences of her actions, Hannah stood in the light, ready to take on the challenges that lay ahead. She was no longer just a target of racism. She was a beacon of hope, a symbol of resilience, and a leader who would continue to fight for a world where everyone, regardless of their race or background, was seen, heard, and respected. The day Tara Lux posted her mocking video, it wasn't just her followers who tuned in. On the other side of the screen, far removed from the world of influencers and Instagram drama, several corporate offices were also watching closely. Tara had become a valuable asset to many brands. Her large following, her ability to generate engagement, and her knack for staying relevant made her an influencer worth investing in. For many companies, especially those trying to tap into the lucrative social media market, Tara was a key player. Among these brands were a diverse mix. Some were well-established corporations with global reach, while others were smaller, more niche companies trying to make their mark. Ironically, several of the brands Tara represented were Black-owned, companies that had hoped to leverage her platform to reach a broader, more diverse audience. When the video mocking Hannah first hit the internet, these brands, like many others, were initially unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. In a sleek boardroom on the 34th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, the executive team of a prominent beauty brand, one of Tara's major sponsors, gathered for their weekly meeting. The company had prided itself on being inclusive, marketing its products as suitable for all skin tones and hair types. Their partnership with Tara had been a strategic move, a way to connect with younger, trend-conscious consumers. As the team reviewed the week's sales numbers, one of the marketing directors casually mentioned the new video Tara had posted. "She's at it again," he said with a chuckle, passing his tablet around the table. "This one's going to get some traction." At first, the video was met with the usual reactions: amusement from those who didn't see the problem, a few raised eyebrows from those who sensed something off. But as the executives watched Tara ridicule Hannah's natural hair, mimicking her voice and laughing at her appearance, the mood in the room shifted. "This doesn't look good," the head of public relations finally said, frowning at the screen. It's mean-spirited." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. The company had worked hard to cultivate an image of inclusivity and respect. They had carefully curated their brand to align with the values of diversity, launching campaigns that celebrated different cultures and ethnicities. Tara's video, with its blatant mockery, was a stark contradiction to everything they stood for. "What's the sentiment online?" the CEO asked, leaning back in his chair, his expression turning serious. Within hours, their worst fears were confirmed. The backlash against Tara began to escalate, and with it, the scrutiny on the brands that had chosen to partner with her. Social media was abuzz with calls for these companies to take a stand. People were tagging brands in posts, demanding to know why they were still supporting someone who so openly mocked another woman of color. The connection between the brand's values and Tara's actions was impossible to ignore. Across the country, in the headquarters of a luxury skincare company, a similar conversation was unfolding. This company, too, had recently signed a lucrative deal with Tara to promote their new line of products. They had been thrilled with the results. Tara's posts had driven significant traffic to their website, and sales were up. But now that success was overshadowed by the growing controversy. The company's legal team was the first to raise concerns. "We need to protect the brand," one of the lawyers said during an emergency conference call. "If we're associated with this, it could cause irreparable damage to our reputation." The decision was made quickly, too quickly for some of the executives, who were reluctant to sever ties with an influencer who had been so profitable. But the tide of public opinion was undeniable, and in the end, the company issued a carefully worded statement, distancing itself from Tara and announcing that they were ending their partnership with her immediately. The situation was even more complex for the Black-owned brands Tara had represented. For them, the backlash was personal. These were companies founded on principles of empowerment and community, often started by entrepreneurs who had themselves faced discrimination and hardship. They had seen in Tara a way to reach a wider audience, to showcase their products on a platform that could elevate their voices. But now they found themselves entangled in a controversy that struck at the very heart of their mission. In a small office in Atlanta, the founder of a Black-owned hair care line sat with her team, watching the social media storm unfold. Her company had been growing steadily, with a loyal customer base that valued their commitment to natural, healthy hair products. Partnering with Tara had seemed like a smart move at the time, a way to gain exposure and compete with larger, more established brands. But now, the founder felt a deep sense of betrayal. "How could she?" she asked, more to herself than to her team. "She's supposed to be helping us lift each other up, not tearing us down." The team quickly mobilized, drafting a statement that denounced Tara's comments and reaffirmed their commitment to supporting all forms of beauty. They made the difficult decision to end their partnership with her, despite the financial implications. It was a painful but necessary step, one that aligned with their values, even if it meant taking a hit in the short term. In the days that followed, similar scenes played out in boardrooms and offices across the country. Brand after brand, faced with the growing backlash, made the call to distance themselves from Tara Lux. Some did so reluctantly, worried about the impact on their bottom line. Others acted swiftly, seeing in this moment an opportunity to publicly stand for something greater than profits. As statements were released, distancing videos were made, and contracts were quietly terminated, Tara's empire began to crumble. The influencer who had once been at the center of attention found herself increasingly isolated, her partnerships evaporating as quickly as they had formed. The brands that had once seen her as an asset now viewed her as a liability, a symbol of everything they didn't want to be associated with. For the Black-owned brands, the fallout was particularly challenging. They had to navigate the dual burden of distancing themselves from Tara while also reassuring their customers that they were still committed to their core values. But for many, the decision to cut ties was clear. They could not, and would not, align themselves with someone who had so flagrantly disrespected the very community they were part of. As the last of the statements went out and the calls were made, the collective rejection of Tara Lux became a powerful statement in itself. It was a reminder that in the world of business, values still mattered, and that actions, even those taken in the seemingly inconsequential world of social media, had real consequences. And so, as Tara's world unraveled, the brands she had represented moved forward, their paths now separate from hers. They had made their choice, and in doing so, they had aligned themselves with a movement that was about more than just profits. It was about integrity, respect, and the recognition that some lines should never be crossed. This was the awakening that rippled through corporate boardrooms, as companies big and small grappled with the impact of one woman's prejudice and the powerful response it had provoked. In the days following the corporate exodus from Tara Lux's brand, the fallout from her actions continued to ripple across the internet and beyond. For Tara, each passing day felt like a descent further into irrelevance, a fate she had once believed impossible. As her sponsorship deals dried up and her follower count continued to plummet, Tara found herself grasping at straws, desperate to reclaim even a fraction of the influence she had so casually wielded before. Meanwhile, Hannah's star was rising. The movement she had unintentionally sparked was gaining momentum, drawing in voices from all corners of the internet. Her message of self-empowerment and resilience resonated deeply with people who had long felt marginalized, and her platform was rapidly evolving into something much larger than she had ever imagined. Amidst this chaos, a curious development began to take shape behind the scenes. Tara's agent, a shrewd and seasoned professional who had navigated the tumultuous world of celebrity for years, recognized that their situation was quickly becoming untenable. The agent had managed PR crises before, but this was different. Tara's image wasn't just tarnished, it was toxic. The usual strategies of damage control were proving ineffective, and it was becoming increasingly clear that Tara needed a drastic move to salvage her career. After numerous conversations with PR experts, legal advisors, and industry insiders, the agent arrived at a bold idea, one that, if executed correctly, could potentially turn the tide. The plan was simple in theory but delicate in practice. Approach Hannah with an offer of collaboration. If Tara and Hannah could be seen together, working towards a common goal, it might help to rehabilitate Tara's image. It was a long shot, but in the world of media, stranger things had worked. The agent knew that this proposal would be met with resistance from both sides, but they also understood that the stakes were too high not to try. A collaboration between Tara and Hannah could send a powerful message of reconciliation and progress, one that might just be enough to win back some of the public's favor. But it would have to be handled carefully, with tact and sincerity, qualities Tara was not exactly known for. With a plan in place, the agent reached out to Hannah's team. The message was cautious, framed as an opportunity for both women to come together in a show of unity. It acknowledged the hurt caused by Tara's actions, but emphasized the potential for positive change. The agent pitched the idea as a way to turn a negative situation into a powerful moment of healing and growth. If Hannah was interested, the agent suggested, the details could be worked out in a way that respected her boundaries and highlighted the issues she was passionate about. Hannah's initial reaction to the offer was one of disbelief. The idea that Tara's camp would even consider such a proposal felt almost surreal. After everything that had happened, the mocking video, the dismissive apology, the widespread backlash, how could anyone think that a collaboration would be possible, let alone appropriate? It felt like a cynical attempt to clean up a mess that never should have happened in the first place. But as Hannah considered the proposal more deeply, she began to see it for what it truly was, a desperate move by an influencer on the brink of collapse. Tara's team was scrambling, trying to salvage what was left of her career, and they saw Hannah as a lifeline. The power dynamics had shifted dramatically, and now it was Tara who needed something from Hannah, not the other way around. For a brief moment, Hannah contemplated what it might mean to accept such an offer. Could there be some merit in using this opportunity to further the conversation about racism and reconciliation? Could she turn this into a chance to educate and bring about real change? But as she mulled it over, the thought left a bitter taste in her mouth. The collaboration would not be based on genuine remorse or a true desire to make amends. It would be a hollow gesture, driven by self-preservation, rather than any real commitment to the values Hannah stood for. The more she thought about it, the more Hannah realized that agreeing to such a collaboration would compromise everything she had fought for. It would send the wrong message, that the harm Tara had caused could be easily forgiven with a public show of unity. It would diminish the real pain and struggle that people like her had endured, reducing it to a media spectacle. And so, with a calm but firm resolve, Hannah declined the offer. She knew that staying true to her principles was far more important than any potential PR stunt. She had built something meaningful, something that resonated with people on a deep, personal level. No collaboration, no matter how well-intentioned, was worth risking that. Meanwhile, Tara was oblivious to the fact that her agent had even reached out to Hannah. She was preoccupied with her own spiraling situation, clinging to the hope that something, anything, could turn this around. When her agent finally brought up the idea of a collaboration with Hannah, Tara's reaction was swift and visceral. "What?" Tara snapped, her eyes narrowing in disbelief. "You want me to work with her? After everything that's happened?" Her agent tried to explain the rationale behind the offer, emphasizing the potential for redemption, but Tara was having none of it. The idea of collaborating with the very woman she had mocked felt like a betrayal of her own image. Tara had built her brand on being unapologetic, on never backing down, and the thought of teaming up with Hannah felt like admitting defeat. It would be seen as a concession, a sign of weakness, and Tara couldn't stomach the idea. "No," Tara said, her voice cold and resolute. "I'm not doing it. I'm not giving her the satisfaction. We'll find another way." But as Tara's agent left the room, they knew that other options were running out. The collaboration had been a long shot, a last-ditch effort to salvage Tara's crumbling reputation. With that door now closed, the path forward seemed more uncertain than ever. Hannah's refusal to engage in the proposed collaboration was a decisive moment, one that reaffirmed her commitment to her principles. While Tara continued to spiral, consumed by the fallout from her actions, Hannah was busy building something far more enduring. The strength she had shown in turning down the collaboration offer only deepened the respect her followers had for her, solidifying her role as a leader in the fight against racism and prejudice. In the weeks that followed, Hannah continued to use her platform to advocate for change. The movement she had sparked showed no signs of slowing down. People were more engaged than ever, sharing their own stories of resilience and calling out the injustices they had faced. The conversation that had started with a single video was now a full-blown cultural shift, with Hannah at its helm. As the movement grew, so did the opportunities for Hannah to expand her influence. She was invited to speak at conferences, participate in panel discussions, and collaborate with other activists and influencers who shared her vision. Each opportunity allowed her to reach a wider audience, spreading her message of empowerment and equality even further. But despite her rising profile, Hannah remained grounded. She never forgot the reasons she had started speaking out in the first place: the desire to stand up against prejudice and to inspire others to do the same. She knew that the work she was doing was important, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been made to feel less than because of who they were. One of the most significant moments came when Hannah was approached by a major media outlet to create a documentary about her journey. The project would chronicle her rise from a small-time influencer to a leading voice in the fight against racism, capturing the impact of her message on the lives of those who had been inspired by her words. The idea of a documentary was both exciting and daunting for Hannah. It was an opportunity to tell her story on a larger scale, to reach people who might not be active on social media, but who could still benefit from hearing her message. But it also meant revisiting the painful moments that had led her to this point, the moments of doubt, fear, and frustration that had shaped her into the person she had become. After careful consideration, Hannah agreed to the project. She knew that it was important to share her story, not just for herself, but for the countless others who had faced similar struggles. The documentary would be a way to amplify the voices of those who had been marginalized, to shine a light on the systemic issues that still plagued society. As production on the documentary began, Hannah found herself reflecting on the journey she had taken. From the moment she had posted her first response video, to the wave of support that had followed, to the decisions she had made along the way, it had all been a whirlwind of emotions and experiences. But through it all, she had remained true to herself, refusing to compromise her values for the sake of convenience or popularity. The documentary would be more than just a retelling of her story. It would be a call to action, a reminder that change is possible, that one voice can make a difference, and that standing up for what is right is always worth it, no matter the cost. As the cameras rolled and the interviews were conducted, Hannah's story began to take shape, a narrative of resilience, empowerment, and hope. And while Tara Lux faded further into the background, her relevance diminishing with each passing day, Hannah's influence continued to grow. She had become more than just an influencer. She had become a symbol of what it meant to rise above hate and to use one's platform for good. The world was watching, and Hannah was ready to lead. As weeks turned into months, Tara Lux found herself living in a shadow of her former life. The once unyielding and unapologetic influencer was now a recluse, her world reduced to the walls of her apartment and the flickering screen of her phone, where she watched in silence as the world moved on without her. Her attempts to salvage her career had all failed. Each new venture met with the same cold indifference or outright hostility from a public that had not forgotten, and more importantly, had not forgiven. Tara had always believed she was above it all, untouchable in her fame. But the reality of her isolation was something she could no longer deny. The brands she had represented, the followers she had once commanded, all gone. Even her closest allies in the influencer world had distanced themselves, afraid of being tainted by association. The world that had once revolved around her had turned its back, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the haunting echoes of her past mistakes. But it was a letter that finally shattered the fortress of denial Tara had built around herself. A letter that arrived one rainy afternoon, slipped through her mail slot like an afterthought, but carrying a weight that would change everything. The envelope was simple, plain white with no return address. Inside, a single piece of paper, handwritten in neat, careful script. The words were from someone Tara had never met, a young woman who had once been one of her most ardent followers. "Dear Tara," the letter began, "I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I felt I had to write to you. I used to look up to you so much. You were everything I wanted to be, confident, successful, fearless. When I watched your videos, I felt like I could take on the world. But then I saw what you did to Hannah, and it broke my heart. I've always struggled with my identity, with being proud of who I am. And when I saw you tear someone down for something I've been bullied for my entire life, it made me feel like all the progress I'd made was worthless." The letter went on, detailing the pain, the confusion, and the deep sense of betrayal the young woman felt. But it wasn't just an expression of anger. It was a plea for understanding, a cry from someone who had once believed in Tara and was now grappling with the loss of that belief. "I don't know if you'll ever change, but I hope you do, because there's still a part of me that wants to see you rise above this, to become the person I thought you were." The letter ended with a simple request: to remember that words have power, that influence carries responsibility, and that redemption is possible, but only if it comes from a place of genuine remorse and change. Tara sat with the letter for hours, reading and rereading it until the words blurred together. For the first time, the full impact of her actions hit her with the force of a tidal wave. This wasn't just about losing followers or sponsorships. This was about the real, tangible hurt she had caused to people who had once looked up to her. The realization was devastating. The walls Tara had built around her heart began to crack, and through those cracks, the truth began to seep in. She had allowed her ego, her need for validation, and her deep-seated prejudices to dictate her actions. And in doing so, she had not only destroyed her career, but had also inflicted real harm on others. For the first time in months, Tara felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel: shame. And with that shame came the understanding that she couldn't continue down this path, that something had to change, starting with herself. The next day, Tara made a decision that surprised even her. She called her agent and instructed them to reach out to Hannah, not with another offer of collaboration, but with a request for a meeting, a private one, with no cameras, no PR, just two people sitting down to talk. Hannah was hesitant at first, but after much deliberation, she agreed. The meeting was set for a quiet cafe, far from the public eye. When the day arrived, Tara found herself sitting across from the woman she had so cruelly mocked. The woman who had, in many ways, taken everything from her, and who had risen above it all. The conversation was awkward at first, filled with long silences and hesitant glances. But then, Tara did something she hadn't done in a long time. She apologized. Not the empty, half-hearted apology she had once offered, but a real one. She spoke about the letter she had received, the impact it had on her, and how it had opened her eyes to the damage she had caused. She didn't ask for forgiveness, nor did she expect it. She simply wanted Hannah to know that she was sorry and that she was committed to changing. Hannah listened, her expression unreadable. When Tara finished, there was a long pause. Then, in a voice that was calm but firm, Hannah told her that change was possible, but it wasn't something that could be achieved overnight. It required work, introspection, and a willingness to confront the ugliness within oneself. If Tara was truly committed to that path, then maybe, in time, she could find redemption. The conversation ended on a tentative note, with no promises, but with a small glimmer of something that had been missing for a long time: hope. In the weeks that followed, Tara began to take the first steps on the long road to redemption. She started by quietly supporting causes she had once ignored, using what remained of her platform to highlight issues of racism and prejudice. She attended workshops and seminars, not as a speaker, but as a learner, sitting in the back and absorbing the lessons she had once thought she didn't need. Word of Tara's transformation began to spread, slowly at first, but then gaining momentum. Some in the media were skeptical, others dismissive, but there were those who saw the potential for real change. It wasn't long before a major outlet reached out to Hannah for her thoughts on Tara's apparent shift. Hannah, who had been watching from a distance, decided to respond. In a carefully worded statement, she acknowledged Tara's efforts and expressed cautious optimism about her journey. She reiterated the importance of holding people accountable, but also emphasized the power of forgiveness and the possibility of growth. The statement had a significant impact. It was seen as an endorsement of sorts, and it lent credibility to Tara's attempts to rebuild her image. While not everyone was convinced, the tide began to turn, and Tara found herself slowly regaining some of the respect she had lost. It wasn't a full redemption, but it was a start. Tara's journey was far from over, and she knew that she would have to continue proving herself, not just to the public, but to herself. But for the first time, she felt she was on the right path, a path that would allow her to use her influence for good, to make amends for the harm she had caused, and to become the person she should have been all along. As the world watched this unlikely redemption story unfold, there was a sense that something profound had shifted. It was a reminder that change, though difficult, is always possible, and that even the most deeply ingrained prejudices can be overcome if one is willing to do the work. In the end, it was Hannah who had the last word. In an interview, she was asked about Tara's journey and what it meant in the broader context of the fight against racism. She paused for a moment before responding, choosing her words carefully. "It's not enough to acknowledge the wrong," Hannah said. "We have to do the work to make it right. Redemption is not a destination. It's a process. And that process begins with humility, with the willingness to listen, to learn, and to change." She concluded the interview with a quote from Maya Angelou, a poet and civil rights activist whose words had always guided her. "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better." For Tara, for Hannah, and for everyone who had followed their story, these words resonated deeply. They were a call to action, a reminder that the fight against racism is ongoing, and that the power to change the world begins with the courage to change oneself. That's it, everyone. What are your thoughts on Tara's journey from prejudice to redemption? Which part of her transformation impacted you the most? Tara's story highlights that redemption is a continuous process, beginning with the willingness to change. We'd love to hear your opinions. Do you think her change is genuine? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you have another story of justice or transformation you'd like us to explore, let us know. Don't forget to subscribe for more impactful stories and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Remember, change starts within. Keep listening, learning, and making a difference, one story at a time.